The economy feels off, and the forces behind it are hidden, mostly unchosen or even unseen by you. Monetary policy, government debt, structural cracks, these things exert hidden influence on the conditions of your prosperity and your family's future. Gross domestic problem exposes them so that you can see clearly and act accordingly. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to Gross Domestic Problem. Today's episode starts with a question that everybody asks, but very few people know how to answer. Where does my money go? Not in the abstract sense, not defense, not healthcare, not line items in a $1 trillion blur, but your money, the actual dollars that you earned and then the government expropriated from your paycheck and disappeared into a system so large it feels real. Where did that go? That's what we're talking about today. Taxes Wrapped, which is an app designed and built by our guest today, does something almost offensively simple. It hands you a receipt, not metaphorically, concretely, itemizes your federal taxes down to the last dollar and cent, and lets you see where your contribution actually lands in what the government actually spends. And that turns out to be more than a curiosity, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that is the quiet shift from abstraction to accountability. From the government spends to you spend, and this is what you bought. In a system increasingly defined by scale, opacity, obscurity, and borrowed time, this kind of clarity is potentially disruptive. And I find that disruption a relief, because wherever I have been in DC, working in this space for the last 3.5 years, it happens in every conversation with people who are professionally engaged on the issue. Eventually, we say, look, we all know what the ideas are and what sorts of things will be necessary to solve a $39 trillion debt. We know what to do. The ideas are not in short supply, but the voters will not support it. And that, I think, is where Taxes Wrapped really comes in. So today, we're going to be talking to Daniel Hall, the creator of this app, not just about the tool itself, but about what happens when you collapse the distance between citizen and state and force the question a lot of politicians would rather we avoid it. Daniel, thank you so much for being here, man.
Hey, it's a pleasure. This is so fun.
So you don't work in a policy shop in Washington, D.C.
That's correct.
Tell us about where you come from, and then the long and winding road that brought you to the door of fiscal policy and digital marketing.
Yeah, well, so I have to shout out my AP Economics class in high school. Senior year, I was learning about, and I will probably say the wrong thing, so your audience, please don't hate me, but Keynesian economics, supply and demand, the basics. But passed my AP test, and it was like maybe there's a curiosity here. So I've kind of followed just broadly like the economists, and really through COVID getting interested in some investment, and like following some economists talking about just the curiosity of where sociology and psychology meets our money and how markets work, and then what the government's doing with some of that, and then professionally being in working for a SaaS startup, and then working with nonprofits, building digital experiences, which is what I would call this a digital experience that came together as an idea. But yeah, so some of the curiosities of economic, economic curiosity meets software development, meets a little extra time on my hands on the weekends, and put this together. So,
so I'm curious, what you're at some point you have the idea, and I think most people will get the reference immediately that Taxes Wrapped is kind of an allusion to Spotify Wrapped, and
that's right.
Both Daniel and I have backgrounds in music, and probably have spent more time on Spotify than the average person. But you get to end of the year of Spotify Wrapped, and what it does is it grabs all the things you forgot you listened to. That's like the revealing part of it. You forgot you listened to this in March. You had this ridiculous fling with this the Strokes, and you forgot about that, and now and then you actually spent way more time listening to Taylor Swift than you think you did, and it turns out that then Spotify tells you something about yourself. And that's the appeal of it. We all share that at the end of the year because we're like, oh my gosh, like we're either like, I'm embarrassed about this, or I am way cooler than I thought I was. And we share it with people. But, and so that's the concept behind Spotify Wrapped. Tell us how, like at some point you get the idea, what if we did this with taxes? Walk us through it.
Yeah. Well, so also I want to say I've been really inspired, and I sort of hinted at this, about the psychology of like motivation and engaging, call it a consumer or just a user is like some people don't like that term, but a user in software. How do you engage and re-engage those people?
Yeah.
And that mixes into a lot of digital marketing strategy. And a group that I look up to is called Mischief, and you can look them up with MSCHF. They're based out of Brooklyn.
Cool.
And they have, I think, close to 100 now projects that are I would say this is the closest thing to a Mischief project that ever hit my brain. They want to take like their digital experiences and even a lot of physical experiences and products are like a twisted take on something familiar or a social norm that they want to challenge. And I could riddle off like some of those, but like one is you choose a side on whether or not to kill a cow to get its beef or to save the cow, and they kind of pit people against one another in a digital. It's really interesting projects to like really poke at like motivation and psychology of people. So that said, I love that prodding, the disruption that you mentioned. I love the disruption in making us pause and go like, why do I do the things that I do? Why is that the way that it is? And just not to like burn anything down necessarily, but to get at the attention. And so I would say that framing with this moment of where at the end of the year, like you said, Spotify Wrapped this year with all these new AI tools, they have so much data about us with granola. We had, I think they called theirs Crunched, which was cute and clever, but granola crunched. I think even LinkedIn did one that people were sharing around, and it's like how do we capture that in this tax return season zeitgeist kind of thing where we're still close enough to that end of year that the wrapped and crunched data moment meets this tax, like, oh, here we go, here comes April, have you done your taxes yet, what am I gonna and just shove those together in a way that that gets us to ask some big questions about where our money goes, and hopefully a fun tongue-in-cheek way that isn't turning off too much of either side of the aisle, if you will.
Right. It's a tricky thing, I think, because the price you pay to live in a society is that we have to pay in common for the things that society owns. And so everybody gets that kind of taxes are a necessary evil, and the benefit we get out of them is that we live in a society that for the most part works. And I mean, I think, good people can disagree on the extent to which it works, but I think anybody who's like widely traveled is going to have plenty of data to say like, okay, look, well, there's warts here, but the society works, and we pay for that with taxes. But I do think that I think there's a danger on both sides, actually. On the one hand, people they probably this is what makes a wrapped product so interesting. On the one hand, we all know that that anytime you have politicians spending money, that there's going to be some level of stuff that, I mean, frankly, if we saw it, it'd be embarrassing, just like, I can't believe that we fund this, or I can't believe we fund that. On the other hand, I think a lot of people don't realize how much of what they're investing in, or what the society's investing on their behalf, that they would endorse. And I think I want to get into my own results here for a second, and then talk briefly about kind of how it's been, how this has been received by other people. But mine, it kind of stung me a little bit, because what it says, my profile was the permanent undersecretary. And so I want to hear from you about that profile, as in here in just a moment. But if effectively what it was saying is you've gotten to the point where, you're funding real big stuff, and this is what its important was. And I was actually interested to see like how much of the things that my taxes are going to, it's like, oh, that actually kind of Makes sense. And that actually kind of makes sense. I'm curious, first of all, tell me about the permanent undersecretary. And why are you trying to hurt me with that name?
Okay, well, so a secret, and I hope this helps to, like, maybe that'll land a little softer. So in setting up this project, also because I wanted to make this as affordable for myself as possible, because I didn't know if this I knew it had the opportunity to go potentially viral, right? And so, or no one would touch it. It's like, that's probably anything on that spectrum. So I needed to make this resilient budget-wise, to put it that way. And so it's serverless, which means that it's not actually capturing any of your data. The secret is that you can, and there's even like a guesstimate. So if you don't know how much taxes you paid, it's like, just click a button. The point really isn't the amount, it's to get you going. So all of that said, there's a bit of randomization that it gives you. So like, I'm sorry, and if you took it again, you might actually not get that same result.
Okay.
So feel free to like go try it again, and you'll get like, some other clever.
I mean, that's obviously, because the point is not about me, but about us, right? And
that's
right.
So
it's not it's not about like, I mean, that in some ways the analogy to Spotify is probably a little bit unhelpful, because Spotify has all this information, because I've traded that information for my access to Spotify's library. This
and the data points over time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, they're actually watching me. They're actually watching me. You haven't, this app.
And I also wanted it to where if you shared it with a friend at lunch and they took it, it would be a little more randomized. So like, there are, out of I think I have 12 profiles. Out of those 12, there are sectioned off somewhat to where it's not perfect tax bracket to profile, but it's like ballpark, so that maybe you and a friend wouldn't get the exact same profile response off of a very similar, like if you're in this similar situation. So some of it's smoke and mirrors for the sake, again, of like,
sure,
there's caveats throughout that are like, listen, this is not a, want to be very, very careful about that. But
I'm curious, what did, like, I mean, obviously you're setting all this up, that means that to some extent you had to kind of like, go into the treasure trove of the $5 trillion in American revenue and $7 trillion of American expenses every year, and try to make some sense of what you're seeing there. What did you learn from that side of it, from figuring out, like, I mean, you're giving us a receipt. That means you had to line item the budget a little bit. What did you learn that you didn't like? What was the most surprising thing that you picked up in that process?
Well, like, I got to go back a little bit. So let me go back and add a little more color to one of my answers. That I kind of answered a slightly more creative version of like why I built this. I have to also say there was a interview with David Freeberg and Ray Dalio on the All In podcast that I'm mowing the yard listening to those guys, and that was another in the recipe of like where this idea came from. That was another moment that was like, this is a big topic. It's such big numbers that my brain, and again, I have this like economic curiosity from high school. Right. But my brain still doesn't really know what to do with it, or how scary the consequences are, how much time we have before we reach this cliff. And so again, this is me trying to just get a little bit more attention to asking big questions about this, so that no matter where you are in a political spectrum, that you can say, we're all in this together. We're approaching this cliff that we've got to figure out. We got to do something about it. Yeah. So that would be, if you boiled it down to like the real why, that would be the why behind all of this, is to like, how do I get attention on the national debt? Yeah. And then I sprinkled through some of the other like curiosities or like, head scratchers around filing taxes because of the zeitgeist moment. And so like the fact that, and there was in an early version of this, an incorrect way of positioning a very real thing, which is about half of us file. And now there's a lot of different reasons for that are nuanced and should be considered. But like the fact that only about, in this very specific number, 165, almost 166 million people file. Yeah. And so like that should just be like, really? Is that real? Like why is that? And just to ask the questions.
Yeah.
So to get to the receipt part, again, our taxes are pooled. So this is a fictional hypothetical line item receipt, right?
Portioning out a share.
And what I wanted to do, again, there are in this, to get under the hood a little bit, there are close to 600 different line items that populate this to the dollar. So you've got stuff like a wing on a jet, F-16 bomber. Well, I don't know what the right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not aviation. It's not my. But like a wing on that might cost.
All of the Top Gun fans of this show, including myself, we're just crying, cringing on the inside.
Know. But I'm sorry. heard they're doing a number 3, so hopefully any fans are excited. But yeah, so it itemizes it on the hypothetical receipt down to the and what I also wanted to do was to get as like weirdly specific about it, so that it was like, there's a coffee filter somewhere. In my mind, it's like it's wet, it's already kind of gross. And like I paid for that coffee filter one way or another. Just as much as, I helped pay for the F-16 wing or whatever it is. And so to have those things be like categorized and even a buoy, like a monitoring, weather buoy at a certain, on the, just oddly specific to give a little bit of fun here. I'm trying to get back to your actual question, which is what did I learn? And I don't know, other than it just broadening the horizon of like, my fraction of a contribution to this American experiment is paying for this crazy amount of stuff. A guardrail on a federal highway in the middle of Montana. You're welcome, America. It's just a fascinating look at all the things that we contribute to, that I hope people get a delight out of how silly specific it goes. For that sake. So
I think that's really great. I think for one, I was surprised. I kind of felt two different things when I took it. The first thing was, there were things on the list that I just kind of, I can't believe that's on here. I mean, I can't believe that. The things to which our taxes go are some of them are just unbelievable, unconscionable. I did also have this sense of like, and I think that's what the specificity does. It closes, as I said in the intro, it kind of closes the distance between me and us, and made me feel like, I, as a person paying taxes, I'm part of this. I'm contributing to it. I'm a part of this, and I think a lot of people would rather maybe that they weren't. But I think that they, most of us are pretty okay with being part of this. We might disagree about how much of our income ought to be going to this sort of thing, what sorts of things the government's ought to be doing on our behalf, and all that stuff. But that's the whole point: is that like you're paying into it by compulsion, so you damn well should participate where you can. And I think that means that like that becoming an informed citizen and voting for the people who then decide what to do with the enormous resources that we give them. Hold on one second. Perfect. Just letting this will invite and motivate us to care about the things that people say who represent us. And they don't just represent us. It's like Congress doesn't just go up to DC and pass laws. They go up to DC and they spend $5, $6, $7 more trillion. And the fact that some of this is funded by tax, the fact that some of it is funded by deficit spending, I mean, that's a huge part of the app that we haven't really talked about yet, is that you do the thing, you get your rat profile, and then you kind of go on forward and you're learning about where you sit in the whole pie of a $39 trillion debt, a $2 trillion deficit. All of those things have real consequences. This is one of those like really cool, I think just one of those electrifying ways that says like, hey, you should get involved in this, and you should, and people ought to become better, more familiar with what our revenue and spending picture look like, what they're doing for us, what they're not doing for us, and just as you said, the dangers that await if we don't fix the structural imbalance. Because the fact is, like, whatever my taxes and your taxes pay for, we're buying more every year, far more every year than we are paying for in taxes. And that leads me, I think, to the one maybe the closest I'll get to a critique of the app.
Yeah.
Not that the app deserves it. I mean, it's an admirable project that everybody should do. I mean, and part of the reason I wanted to have you on is I really just want to have an excuse to tell everybody who will listen to my voice that they should go do this. It's fun. It's interesting, it's educational, and it gives, it's a way for us to talk about this that doesn't immediately descend and devolve into like, what is my team and what is your team? We're all on one team to a very important extent. I know that sounds like cotton candy and it's a cliche, but it really is true. Like, the people on this who listen to this podcast, who vote differently from me, we are on a team together. And maybe in some sense, we're compelled to be on a team together by the fact that the same people point their guns at us every year and say, give me a bunch of your paycheck. That puts us on one team. We are invested in an outcome that benefits us all. Now, the one thing I would say is that in itemize, now this bit doesn't itemize well, but I looked at my taxes wrapped, and everything I saw in it comes from the discretionary budget. And like, so discretionary means things like defense, highways, education. All of that comes from the discretionary part of the federal budget. And the thing is, the discretionary part of the federal budget actually accounts for a little less than a third of it, somewhere between a quarter and a third, depending on like how you do the math. The vast majority of the federal budget, and the vast majority of the federal budget covers the so-called mandatory spending, and that's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, all things that like most Americans are in principle okay with. But when we look at the risk, I mean, this is like the one, maybe, again, I'm working my way towards like a tiny, mild critique here. When we look at this, what's going to happen is I'm going to look at the biggest line items on my taxes wrapped, and I'm going to be like, man, do we really need another wing on another F-16? But the truth is, like, before we get to any of that, and I say before because mandatory spending, most people don't know this. Mandatory spending is not voted on. Congress doesn't touch it. Like, it is automatically spent. And by a unique technology of congressional, I would say, can kicking down the road. These are things that we do not ask Congress to vote on every year. While all the things that are in taxes wrapped, they are from the part of the budget that Congress votes on every year. But that is neither the biggest part of our spending. It's not close to the biggest part, nor is it the fastest growing. Almost everything in the discretionary budget, if you look over the next 30 years, almost everything in the discretionary budget is shrinking as a portion of both the budget and of GDP.
Yeah.
Entitlements, so-called entitlements, mandatory spending like Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security are growing. And interest on the debt is growing. Interest on the debt this year was a little over $1 trillion, which is, we spent more in 2025 on debt interest than we spent on the entire Pentagon budget. Every single soldier, every single bullet, every single MRE that they eat while they're training, every single Kevlar helmet, all of it is less than we spent on defense. I mean, on interest. Now, all the people who live in my world, we all know this. Right, but the reason I'm telling it to you is not because this app isn't wonderful. It is amazing. But the thing that, I mean, I'm basically kind of issuing this as a cry for help to you, Daniel.
Yeah.
My people don't know how to get other people's eyeballs on that problem. And the thing is, good people can disagree, by the way. Lots of people who listen to my show or people I deal with in Washington, that, all people are going to come out in the field and we're all going to disagree over like how much of the budget should be Social Security, what is worth spending in deficit for, what, if anything, what is, like what investments are we, that's a healthy debate for a functional society.
Yeah.
But what's actually happening right now is the absence of debate. And to that extent, the dysfunction of a society. And that's the thing that's going to be dangerous to us long term in terms of our budget, our fiscal solvency, the country holding together financially and protecting itself from ruin. It will not be the cool line items on our budget. It will be these at least looking at things as they stand now, like over the next 30 years, we're going to borrow $100 trillion, which is like, I mean, whatever. Everybody's brain is already shut off. Right. But we're going to borrow more than double what we have already borrowed in the whole history of the country in the next 30 years. And the vast majority of that borrowing is going to be covering our entitlement liabilities. Now, some people would say that's worth it if we can do it. And obviously the fact that, it's not impossible. Like, yes, we spent more on interest than debt than defense spending last year, but we could double our defense spending if we decide that we want to invade Canada, Mexico all at the same time. None of this stuff is fixed, and it's all stuff to fight about. But the things that we don't fight about are also coincidentally the things that are the biggest parts of the budget. So I'm not telling you, that's
I love that.
A long-winded cry for help.
Yeah, man. Well, and so maybe this, bleeds over into like what kind of responses have I received? Because thank you. There's a bit of education there that you just gave me, which is like a gift. And that you'll see in the next iteration of this for sure.
That's right.
Because I'm already thinking, like, how do we? Yeah, I hear the cry for help, and I'm like, man, what a cool. How do we show that? How do we talk about? I think offline, you and I were talking about Social Security, and like, how do we explain some of the spending that's happening in an integrated way that it's tongue in cheek. We're poking at everybody on both sides. And people are willing to engage with it. So like, challenge accepted. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it has been interesting to see, family member on one side of the aisle say, "This is super woke. So proud of you." Like, I think they thought I was challenging even more so the powers that be currently. Mm-hmm. And someone over here saying, I don't see trans surgeries listed in my line items. And this person saying, I don't see how much it costs a day in the war on Iran. So you have everybody's like, here's what I don't see. And it was purposeful to say, what if we rise outside of very important, like, I love how you're positioning this. These are things that are worthy of like debate and worthy of fighting, but I wanted to rise above the headlines and to share again, that commonality of like, this is, and to your point, this is discretionary, not the other side. So like, just some thoughts back, some of the response I've gotten.
Anyone could predict what the responses are going to have been, but this is what's so interesting, and this is actually the part I'm very grateful for. So many of these of budget debates or conversations around the national debt or federal spending or taxes, all of this is so completely consumed by information that's out of context or lacks perspective. Like whatever you think, for example, about like trans surgeries for immigrant prisoners, whatever you think about that, it may be, let's just say for the sake of argument, talking, let's give your friend who said that, let's just assume for the sake of argument that he's entirely right. Now, obviously that's debatable, but let's just assume it and say, even if so, let's say it's a moral abomination. I'm not saying it is, but let's just assume it for the sake of argument. It is a tiny, tiny, infinitesimal part of the federal budget. So what should its reflection be? Except for, I mean, and this is the thing, like a lot of this conversation gets kind of bogged down in things that even if you eliminated it, wouldn't make any difference, because they're not actually about the fiscal like these conversations are not so often about the actual fiscal solvency of the country, but about politics. And it's really about a way to sort of like advance my political agenda by using the shame of spending and deficit spending. When the truth is, and I'm saying this as a card-carrying Republican for my entire life, practically, I did have a little, I experimented with the other side when I was in college, like a lot of people do. I'm now ashamed of it. But as practically a lifelong card-carrying Republican, and with plenty of bad things to say about my own side of the aisle, by the way, I have to say, anybody who's honest about this intellectually has to say, deficit spending, the $39 trillion debt, is a bipartisan failure. Mm-hmm. And the way of and the method of that failure has been practically for the entire like period, basically of since 2000, like, because in the 1990s, the debt was more or less under control. There were even a couple years of budgetary surplus, unbelievably. Basically, since then, the bargain has been, I hate you and you hate me, but I want what I want and you want what you want. So we'll split it. Basically, you get what you want, I get what I want, and we just borrow to cover the spread. That is a bipartisan failure to lead, and it's embedded and it's aided and abetted by a failure to tell the American people the truth. That's where I really saw the power of Taxes Wrapped and things like that. Is that this is an opportunity to tell you in a way that's cheeky and funny and lets you laugh at yourself, but also realize the gravity of the thing we're dealing with here and dealing with together. That there is, like, we have to tell each other the truth about this. And Republicans can't say, oh, this is all Democrats' fault. And Democrats can't say, oh, this is all Republicans' fault. Because we have spent, on the one hand, we have increasingly made promises to effectively buy votes on both sides of the political aisle. Yeah. And I'm thinking about about De La Montagne saying that the U.S. will endure until Congress figures out that it can bribe the people with the people's own money. It's an absolute prediction of what has in fact happened at least over the last 30 years, and has to start unhappening, which can't begin until people start to tell each other the truth, which are like there is enough in a $39 trillion debt to humiliate everybody's political utopia. None of us are hitting a clean sheet here. And so, yes, maybe, the war in Iran war's never cheap. And there's a case to be made that wars have been a huge part of the ballooning of the national debt over the last 25 years. So people should be really, really careful about, our leadership should be careful about the wars they get us involved in and how we're going to pay for them. And by the way, you should probably not have to give away an entire defense department in debt interest, which is only going to grow. So all of those things are important things to deliberate on. And yet we have to put them in some sort of perspective if what we're actually trying to talk about is the fiscal security of the country and not just grinding a political axe. I'm as guilty as everybody. I'm a professional political operative. I will definitely grind a political axe. But we got to be honest about this, that the fiscal dysfunction of the country is a bipartisan failure.
And it comes to, there is a time and a place for pointing to a really big problem. And then when a topic comes up like those things, saying, table it, it's a distraction from this really important thing. Right. And that's what I wanted this experience to say. Yeah. All things worth debating. Look at this really big problem without the distractions of those things.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Well, we've issued you our call for help, Daniel. Please save our republic. I'm excited about this thing. I can't wait to see what its future life looks like. I think especially as when it comes around again for another year, I'll be thrilled to see how you develop it and how how it grows in terms of its user profile. Anything that educates Americans on the seriousness of the fiscal situation and the part that they're playing in it, whether whether by their own vote or if they don't vote by compulsion, is worth. This is worth us giving all sorts of airtime and light to. So I wish you good luck, and I'm so thankful for what you've done.
Oh, thanks. And and if anybody has any other input or even ideas as to how to to express in a digital format, I'm open to all feedback. Please go through the experience at taxeswrapped.com. And at the end, there's a way to support the project. There's an email there that you can that forwards to my
oh my
email.
Gosh.
So
oh, you brave man.
give feedback. I would love to hear from you. And that's great. I really appreciate the opportunity to get this on here. It's been a really fun project.
Yeah.
And I have learned along the way. And I feel like even today, it's like, wow. We need a way to reflect back to the people the mandatory spending piece. So excellent
amazing
feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to subscribe to the show. Want to dig deeper? Follow us at millennialdebt.org for more insights, updates, and ways to be part of the solution. Thanks for listening.